Let's get weird into it. Number 9. Mark Twain's Cosmic Taxi. We end with something a little less violent, but infinitely more poetic. Halley's Comet is a celestial wanderer that passes by Earth roughly every 75 or 76 years. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event for most people. The American author Mark Twain was born on November 30th, 1835. This was exactly 2 weeks after Halley's Comet reached its closest approach to the sun, visible in the sky. Twain lived a long, loud life, becoming the most famous voice in American literature. In 1909, as he was getting older, he made a prediction. He said, "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. It will be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet. The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together, they must go out together." On April 20th, 1910, Halley's Comet returned, blazing across the night sky. The very next day, April 21st, Mark Twain died of a heart attack. He didn't just predict his death, he scheduled it. He treated a celestial body of ice and dust like his personal Uber driver, waiting for it to circle the block so he could hop in for the ride home. It's a rare instance where reality decided to adhere to the rules of good storytelling, wrapping up a life with a perfect, symmetrical bow. Number 8. The Unsinkable Violet Jessop. If you are ever boarding a ship and you see a stewardess named Violet Jessop, turn around, run down the gangplank, and take the train. Violet Jessop was an ocean liner stewardess in the early 20th century, and she had a very specific type of bad luck. In 1911, she was working on the RMS Olympic when it collided with a British warship, the HMS Hawke. The Olympic was badly damaged, but it didn't sink. Violet survived. Okay, she thought, lightning doesn't strike twice. So she signed on to the Olympic's sister ship, the Titanic. You know this part. It's 1912. Iceberg, sinking, chaos. Violet is loaded into Lifeboat 16. She survives, holding a baby that was thrust into her arms. 4 years later, World War I is raging. Violet, seemingly addicted to maritime disaster, signs up as a nurse on the Britannic, the third sister ship of the Titanic. The ship strikes a naval mine in the Aegean Sea. It sinks in 55 minutes. Violet jumps overboard but gets sucked under the keel and strikes her head on the hull. She survives. Again. She survived all 3 of the White Star Line's disaster-prone sister ships. She went on to work on ships for another 30 years. She eventually retired to a cottage in Suffolk to raise chickens, presumably because chickens are notoriously bad at sinking. When she died of heart failure at age 83, the ocean probably let out a sigh of relief that it finally didn't have to try and kill her anymore. Number 7. The Jim Twins. This is the gold standard of simulation theory evidence. In 1940, 2 twin boys were put up for adoption in Ohio. They were separated at birth and adopted by different families who had zero contact with each other. The first family named their baby James. The second family, completely independently, also named their baby James. Okay, Jim is a common name. Not that weird. But let's fast forward 39 years to when they finally reunited. Jim Lewis and Jim Springer started comparing notes, and the conversation went from, "Aw, that's cute," to "someone call a scientist" very quickly. Both Jims had married women named Linda. Both Jims had divorced the Lindas. Both Jims had remarried. Both of the second wives were named Betty. Jim Lewis had a son and named him James Allen. Jim Springer had a son and named him James Allen. Both Jims had a dog when they were kids. Both dogs were named Toy. Both Jims were heavy smokers of the exact same brand of cigarettes, Salem, and drove the exact same car, Chevrolet. Both Jims enjoyed woodworking and had built circular white benches around trees in their backyards. Psychologists at the University of Minnesota studied them and were basically baffled. It suggests that our DNA isn't just a blueprint for our eye color or height. It might be a terrifyingly specific script for our entire lives, right down to the name of the family pet. It makes you wonder how many of your unique life choices are just biological code executing a command line. Number 6. The Booth-Lincoln Paradox. We all know the end of the Abraham Lincoln story. John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor and Confederate sympathizer, assassinates the president at Ford's Theater. It's the headline event of 1865. But the universe loves foreshadowing, and a year or so before the assassination, it set up a scene that would make a screenwriter get fired for being too melodramatic. Robert Todd Lincoln, Abe's son, is standing on a crowded train platform in Jersey City. He's waiting to buy a sleeping car ticket. The crowd is pushing and shoving. Suddenly, the train starts moving, and Robert gets knocked off his feet. He slips into the narrow gap between the platform and the moving train, a death sentence. His legs are dangling, the wheels are grinding, and he is about to be crushed. Suddenly, a hand reaches down, grabs him by the collar, and hauls him back up to safety. Robert turns to thank his hero and freezes. He recognizes the face immediately. It's one of the most famous actors in America. The man who saved Abraham Lincoln's son from a gruesome death was Edwin Booth, the brother of John Wilkes Booth. Edwin was a Union supporter and a good guy. He had no idea he'd just saved the president's son until Robert told him later. Edwin reportedly took great comfort in this act of kindness after his brother committed his atrocity. It's a strange cosmic balancing of the ledger. One Booth takes a Lincoln life, another Booth saves one. Number 5. The Unluckiest Luckiest Man. You are Tsutomu Yamaguchi. It is August 6, 1945. You are an engineer on a business trip to Hiroshima. You're walking to the shipyard, thinking about how nice it will be to go home, when you look up and see a single plane drop a small object. The sky turns into a blinding flash of magnesium white. You are less than 2 miles from ground zero of the first nuclear detonation in human history. You are blown into a potato patch. Your eardrums are ruptured, you're temporarily blind, and you have serious burns. But you survive. You drag yourself to a shelter, spend a night in a nightmare landscape, and the next day, you catch a train home. Where is home? Nagasaki. You get back to Nagasaki, bandaged like a mummy, and being the most dedicated employee of the century, you report to work on August 9th. You are literally in the middle of explaining to your boss that a single bomb destroyed the entire city of Hiroshima. Your boss laughs at you. He says, "You're crazy, Yamaguchi. No single bomb can destroy a whole city." At that exact second, the room fills with a white light. The second atomic bomb detonates over Nagasaki. Yamaguchi was, once again, about 2 miles from ground zero. The office walls blew in, sending glass and debris everywhere. And somehow, for the second time in 3 days, he survived. He is the only person officially recognized by the Japanese government to have survived both blasts. He lived to be 93 years old, presumably because death was too afraid to try a third time. Number 4. The Menace Synchronization. Imagine you have a brilliant idea for a comic strip. You sketch a character, a chaotic, blonde, mischievous little boy who terrorizes his neighborhood. You decide to name him Dennis the Menace. You prepare to launch this comic on March 12, 1951. Now, imagine you are a cartoonist in the UK named David Law. You also draw a chaotic, messy-haired boy who terrorizes his neighborhood. You also name him Dennis the Menace. You also release your first strip on March 12, 1951. This actually happened. At the exact same moment, on opposite sides of the Atlantic Ocean, 2 completely unrelated creators published the first issue of a comic with the exact same title and the exact same premise. There was no internet. There were no leaks. It was just a collective unconscious brain fart that hit the US and the UK simultaneously. The characters were slightly different, though. The American Dennis, created by Hank Ketchum, was a well-meaning nuisance. A kid who tries to help but accidentally destroys a flower bed. The British Dennis? He was a beast. He was essentially a tiny felon. When both publishers realized what had happened, they didn't sue each other into oblivion, which is the most surprising part of this story. They just shrugged and agreed to let both exist, proving that sometimes the universe just really wants a bratty kid named Dennis to exist, regardless of the accent. Number 3. The Prophecy of the Titan. 14 years before the RMS Titanic ever touched the water, an author named Morgan Robertson wrote a novella called Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. Now, writers predict things all the time, usually by accident. But this wasn't a vague prediction. This was a hyper-specific spoiler alert for a tragedy that hadn't happened yet. Let's look at the specs. Robertson's fictional ship was named the Titan. The real ship was the Titanic. The Titan was described as the largest craft afloat and considered unsinkable. So was the Titanic. The Titan was 800 feet long. The Titanic was 882 feet long. Both ships had a top speed of around 25 knots. Both ships carried roughly 3,000 passengers. And, most chillingly, both ships didn't carry enough lifeboats for even half of those people, because of the arrogance of their engineers. In the book, the Titan hits an iceberg. In real life, the Titanic hits an iceberg. In the book, the ship sinks in April in the North Atlantic. In real life, the ship sinks in April in the North Atlantic. In the book, the ship is struck on the starboard side. In real life, well, you get it. Robertson wasn't a psychic. He was just a guy who knew a lot about maritime trends and engineering flaws. He essentially looked at the shipbuilding industry of the late 1800s, did the math, and realized, hey, If we keep building giant metal tubs without lifeboats and drive them fast through ice fields, something bad is going to happen. He predicted the disaster not through a crystal ball, but through common sense, which, historically speaking, is often indistinguishable from magic. Number 2. The Civil War Stalker. War is generally considered a large-scale event involving thousands of people and vast stretches of land. But if you were a grocer named Wilmer McLean, you'd be forgiven for thinking the entire American Civil War was a personal grudge match, specifically targeting your real estate portfolio. It is July 1861. You live in a nice house near a stream called Bull Run in Manassas, Virginia. You are minding your own business when a Confederate general decides your house makes a great headquarters. The first major battle of the Civil War erupts literally in your front yard. A cannonball actually flies down your chimney and lands in the stew you were planning to eat for dinner. Understandably, you decide that this is not the vibe. You want zero part of this conflict. So, you pack up your family, sell the house, and move 120 miles south to a quiet, dusty backwater village where absolutely nothing ever happens. A place called Appomattox Courthouse. You live there peacefully for 4 years, thinking you have successfully ghosted the war. But history is a clingy ex. On April 9, 1865, a messenger knocks on your door. General Robert E. Lee is looking for a suitable place to surrender to Ulysses S. Grant. They don't want to use a tent. They want a parlor. Your parlor. The war that started in your kitchen in 1861 effectively ends in your living room in 1865. Wilmer McLean could have moved anywhere on the continent. Yet the two massive armies followed him like a GPS tracker to stage their grand finale on his good carpet. Afterward, Union soldiers, ecstatic that the war was over, proceeded to steal most of his furniture as souvenirs. The man couldn't catch a break, proving that sometimes you aren't paranoid. History is just specifically out to get you. Number 1. The King's Mirror Image. Imagine you are the King of Italy. It's July 28, 1900, and you are Umberto of Fur. You're feeling peckish, so you decide to dine at a small, unassuming restaurant in the town of Monza. You are not looking for a glitch in the Matrix, you are just looking for some pasta. But the universe has decided to play a very specific, very lazy prank on you. The owner of the restaurant approaches to take your order. You look up, and you are looking into a mirror. The owner looks exactly like you, and I don't mean he has a similar mustache or the same weary expression of a man living in the 19th century. I mean he is your physical clone. But wait. It gets stupider. You ask the man his name. His name is Umberto. You ask him when he was born. He says March 14th, 1844, which is your birthday. You ask him about his family. He tells you he married a woman named Margarita on April 22nd, 1868. You, the king, married Queen Margarita on April 27th, 1868. At this point, your royal brain is probably melting out of your ears. But the restaurant owner mentions he opened this restaurant on the exact same day you were crowned king. The two of you share a laugh, shake hands, and marvel at this statistical impossibility. You invite him to an athletics meet the next day because you have to keep an eye on this guy. But the next day, the restaurant owner doesn't show up. You find out he died that morning in an unexplained shooting accident. You are shocked. But before you can even process the grief for your cosmic twin, an anarchist named Gaetano Bresci jumps out of the crowd and shoots you 4 times. Both Umbertos were born on the same day, lived parallel lives, and were shot to death on the same day. It's like the simulation ran out of character models and just hoped nobody would notice the duplicate assets before deleting them both to cover its tracks. And that's our time for today. More strange things are always coming, so I'll see you in the next one.